On August 19, 1944, German intelligence officers assessing the situation in Romania compiled reports indicating a relatively stable defensive sector. Soviet forces faced German 6th Army and Romanian 3rd and 4th Armies along a 450 kilometers front between the Carpathian Mountains and the Black Sea. The sector had seen limited Soviet probing attacks throughout summer, but nothing suggesting major offensive preparation. German reconnaissance detected Soviet positions, but assessed force levels as insufficient for breakthrough operations. The situation appeared manageable. German reserves were positioned elsewhere, particularly focused on the collapsing situation in Poland following Operation Bagration. 24 hours later, on August 20th at 0400 hours, Soviet artillery opened fire across the northern and southern flanks. The bombardment struck with density indicating massive force concentration. Soviet infantry and armored forces attacked simultaneously from both directions. Within hours, Romanian defensive lines on both flanks had collapsed under assaults far exceeding what intelligence assessments had predicted. German units attempting to reinforce breakthrough sectors discovered they faced a coordinated offensive by over 1 million Soviet soldiers whose concentration German reconnaissance had failed to detect. By August 23rd, 4 days after the offensive began, Soviet pincers met west of Kishinev. The encirclement trapped 18 German and Romanian divisions, approximately 200,000 soldiers. On the same day, Romania's King Michael ordered the arrest of dictator Ion Antonescu and announced Romania was switching sides. Romanian forces that had been fighting alongside Germans began turning their weapons against their former allies. German units found themselves surrounded not only by Soviet forces, but by Romanian units now attacking from within German lines. Within 9 days, the pocket had been eliminated and the entire German defensive position in Romania had disintegrated. This was not fortunate timing or Romanian betrayal alone. Soviet forces had spent weeks concealing one of the largest force concentrations of 1944, while German reconnaissance continued operating. The deception that enabled the Jassy-Kishinev encirclement would be called the Second Stalingrad for its speed and completeness. But this encirclement occurred in 9 days rather than months, and the deception masked preparations that German intelligence, despite systematic reconnaissance, never adequately assessed. The German defensive position in Romania was strategically critical. Romania provided Germany's primary oil supply from the Ploesti fields. The front also protected approaches to Hungary and the Balkans. German 6th Army, rebuilt after its destruction at Stalingrad, held the northern sector. Romanian 3rd and 4th Armies held the center and southern sectors. German intelligence assessment in mid-August acknowledged Soviet forces were present, but concluded they lacked the concentration necessary for major breakthrough operations. Reconnaissance had observed Soviet positions throughout summer, suggesting defensive operations with limited offensive capability. Soviet planning began in late July 1944. Marshal Rodion Malinovsky, commanding the 2nd Ukrainian Front, would attack from the north. Marshal Fyodor Tolbukin, commanding the 3rd Ukrainian Front, would attack from the south. The operational concept was a double envelopment, with pincers meeting west of Romanian positions to encircle German and Romanian forces. Success required achieving a breakthrough on both flanks simultaneously before German reserves could respond. This demanded concentrating overwhelming force at designated breakthrough points while concealing those concentrations. The challenge was geography. The front ran through relatively open terrain where force concentrations should be visible. German intelligence, though degraded, still maintained observation capabilities. Large-scale troop movements, artillery concentrations, and tank assembly areas produced patterns that intelligence officers understood. Soviet maskirovka procedures followed doctrine refined through previous operations. All movement into breakthrough sectors occurred during darkness. Units departed after nightfall and moved along routes planned to minimize exposure. March schedules ensured forces reached concealed positions before dawn. Strict discipline prohibited daytime movement. Concealment during daylight required systematic procedures. Soviet forces positioned in forests, villages, and terrain offering overhead cover. Vehicles were dispersed to prevent density signatures. Camouflage discipline extended to individual soldiers. Defensive positions visible to German observers showed normal activity, while actual offensive preparations occurred in concealed assembly areas. Radio maskirovka prevented German signals intelligence from detecting concentration. Operational forces in attack sectors observed strict radio silence. Communications functioned through couriers and landline systems. Radio deception units maintained normal traffic patterns that suggested routine defensive operations. German signals intelligence detected patterns consistent with a defensive posture. The deception included creating false concentrations away from the actual breakthrough sectors. Soviet units conducted deliberate visible activities in central sectors, so German intelligence would focus attention away from the real breakthrough points on the flanks. Artillery concentration posed an acute challenge. The offensive required massing thousands of guns. Soviet forces positioned artillery in concealed locations at night. Ammunition was dispersed in small caches rather than large dumps. The artillery concentration was assembled without German counter-battery intelligence detecting its true scale. Tank and mechanized forces moved into assembly areas under strict concealment discipline. Vehicles remained under cover during daylight. The armor concentration that would drive the encirclement pincers was assembled without creating vehicle density patterns that German reconnaissance could identify. German reconnaissance along the Romanian front continued throughout August. Luftwaffe units flew missions when weather and fuel permitted, and ground observers monitored Soviet positions. Intelligence officers analyzed reconnaissance reports and radio intercepts. The assessments showed Soviet forces in defensive positions with no indication of major offensive preparation. Force density appeared consistent with defensive deployment, and activity levels suggested routine operations. What German intelligence observed was the defensive front Soviet forces maintained, while actual offensive preparations occurred in concealed assembly areas. Visible Soviet positions showed normal activity because Soviet maskirovka procedures ensured they would appear normal. Forces in attack sectors remained concealed during periods when reconnaissance could observe. On August 19th, final preparations began. Soviet artillery moved into firing positions under darkness. Infantry moved to assault positions. Tank units positioned for breakthrough exploitation. By dawn on August 20th, offensive forces were positioned. German intelligence still assessed the sector as showing no indication of imminent major attack. At 0400 hours on August 20th, Soviet artillery opened fire. The bombardment struck positions on both flanks simultaneously. The density indicated massive force concentration. German defenders, positioned based on intelligence assessments of limited Soviet strength, confronted artillery preparation that revealed force levels far exceeding predictions. Soviet infantry and armor attacked following the bombardment. The assault came from positions where reconnaissance had detected only defensive deployments. The Romanian Third Army on the northern flank collapsed within hours. The Romanian Fourth Army on the southern flank disintegrated similarly. German units attempting to stabilize breakthrough sectors discovered Soviet forces advancing in strength that could not be contained. The pincer movements developed rapidly. Malinovsky's Second Ukrainian Front drove south from breakthrough sectors near Jassy. Tolbuchin's Third Ukrainian Front drove north from breakthroughs near the Black Sea coast. The advance rates were extraordinary. Soviet mobile forces exploited breakthroughs faster than German forces could establish defensive lines. Within 3 days, the pincers were approaching their meeting point west of Kishinev. German Sixth Army Command recognized encirclement was imminent. Units attempted to withdraw, but the Soviet advance had been faster than German reaction. Withdrawal routes were already under attack. Romanian forces, demoralized and aware their nation was collapsing politically, offered limited resistance or abandoned positions. German units faced Soviet forces from multiple directions simultaneously. On August 23rd, Soviet pincers met. The encirclement was complete. 18 divisions were trapped. Soviet forces immediately began reducing the pocket while establishing an outer encirclement to prevent German relief attempts. Also on August 23rd, Romania switched sides. King Michael, coordinating with opposition politicians and Soviet intelligence, ordered Antonescu's arrest and announced Romania was leaving the Axis. Romanian forces within the encirclement and elsewhere ceased fighting or actively turned against German units. German soldiers found themselves facing enemies from positions they had considered allied just hours before. German units in the pocket attempted breakout operations, but faced overwhelming Soviet strength reinforced by Romanian forces now attacking from within German lines. The coordination between Soviet military operations and the Romanian political coup had been planned, and the timing was devastatingly effective. By August 29th, 9 days after the offensive began, organized German resistance had ended. Approximately 200,000 German and Romanian soldiers were killed or captured. German 6th Army, rebuilt after Stalingrad, was destroyed for the second time. The entire German defensive position in Romania had collapsed. Soviet forces occupied Bucharest and were advancing toward Hungary and Bulgaria. The strategic impact extended beyond immediate tactical success. Romania's defection provided Soviet forces with Romanian territory as a base for further operations into the Balkans. Bulgaria, seeing Romania switch, would declare neutrality and then switch sides in September. Hungary faced a direct Soviet threat without the Romanian buffer. The southern flank of the entire Eastern Front had disintegrated in less than 2 weeks. The deception demonstrated that systematic maskirovka could enable encirclement operations on compressed timelines. Stalingrad's encirclement had taken months of preparation and weeks of fighting. Jassy Kishinev achieved comparable encirclement in 9 days because Soviet concealment prevented German forces from positioning to counter the offensive before breakthrough occurred. On August 19, 1944, German intelligence assessed the Romanian front as relatively stable. Soviet forces appeared insufficient for major breakthrough operations. The situation seemed manageable with available forces. 24 hours later, over 1 million Soviet soldiers attacked from concealed positions on both flanks simultaneously. Within 4 days, Soviet pincers met, encircling 18 divisions. Within 9 days, the pocket was eliminated. Romania had switched sides, and the entire German defensive position had disintegrated. The deception worked because Soviet maskirovka procedures operated systematically. Movement during darkness prevented aerial observation. Concealment during daylight suppressed density signatures. Radio silence in attack sectors, combined with deception networks elsewhere, prevented signals intelligence detection. Visible defensive positions maintained normal activity while actual preparations occurred in concealed assembly areas. German reconnaissance observed the front but saw what Soviet procedures had designed it to see. The assessment gap between apparent Soviet capabilities and actual force concentration enabled breakthrough before effective response. The coordination between military deception and Romanian political collapse accelerated the disaster. That was Jassy Kishinev. The second Stalingrad achieved in 9 days through deception, enabling encirclement before the enemy could react.